I think they've been destroying the family rather effectively for decades. And having young kids, I have to really look closely at the things we let them watch. And they can't just watch anything, because they do portray families as dysfunctional a lot of the time. And a lot of the time the father is like dopey and ignorant, and it's all these terrible things that I don't want my kids to emulate at all, or even to apply to me or their mother.
Or the parents, like all this divorce, cheating. It's cool to, the behavior they'll show with couples, it leads to divorce. Divorce, I think, is worse than all the hurricanes, all the COVIDs. Divorce is like, it fundamentally breaks like a family unit's ability to provide for its kids, offer stability. I mean, there's a lot of great people with divorced parents, but I'm not saying it's like some kind of curse, but it's just so ridiculously destructive that if you can like have a laugh together and feel understood, and that's one of the reasons my new special is so heavy on what women go through and moms and, all the things that go wrong with trying to homestead, because in the homestead world, I sometimes see people bite off more than they can chew, and they start fighting about it because it doesn't look like it does on Pinterest. And so to like offer levity to that, hopefully will give couples and families an ability to not, be too hard on themselves and have catastrophes.
And you built a castle for kids? What went on with that?
Yeah, we built this giant play structure during the festival for them to play on and for the moms to hang out. And it's really insane what we've accomplished. It's like we started, we have Bertarian beef, where we have beef now on the pastures when we're not doing specials. And during the festival, donors got to eat all the steaks and the beef that was raised on the land they're standing on for a comedy show. It's insane.
That's incredible.
And that's why I'm like so excited for people to hear about it. But the issue is, it reveals so many grifters that they're terrified of me now, where they're like, oh, if you show that there's a way around it, now they have to do that. And they can't just like get all this money by bitching about it and wanting the deep state to heal itself. It's like, once you show that you can and how you can do it, it starts raising the bar for expectations for influencers. And it's like think about all these giant people that have all this money. I mean, 30 Bugattis, but you can't build one, thing for your neighborhood or a kid.
Right.
Like you can't do one thing for your audience. You can't do anything.
Yep.
And then just feed everyone poison.
Yeah.
I find it disgusting.
I think that's the model, though, what you're doing. I think more people should be doing that if they can. It's a lot of risk, but that is true independence. You personally came up against the machine itself. It's kind of spat you back out. You weren't allowed on simple things like PayPal, Airbnb. And you're like, well, I'm going to just build my own thing, and that's really hard. But I think it's imperative. And I've done that in very small ways, whether it's putting out my own books that way, because I go through years of trying to publish through the institutions that I used to love, and be like, well, they don't want me. So if I don't want them, then I'll do my own thing. And it's one of my reasons with Trump. I don't really like Trump all that much, because he wants to be loved by these institutions still. Right? And I'm like, I wish he'd just reject him. I know he can't. He's in a different level totally, but he, as much as he doesn't like the media, he still wants them to love him to a large degree. And I'm like, I wish he would reject, because it would set a really good example for people to be like, we don't need to partake in these institutions. I know I'm talking about someone who wants to be president, and that's a whole institution on itself, but I like setting that precedent of being, go out there, and everyone learned, not everyone, a lot of people learned that during COVID. We can't rely on supermarkets. We can't rely on the government. We got to do this ourselves. And what you're doing is hopefully going to spark a lot of more people to do that on their own.
Funny you said rely. We were selling shirts literally that said "Do not rely," because people said "Do not comply," and I'm like, you can only not comply if you don't rely.
Right.
Like the root, because people are like, "Oh, we have to stand up." I'm like, they feed you though. Like you got to really figure out how this works, and so the more people don't rely, then they can actually not comply. And then the more you do that, the more you don't even get mad. You're not even mad. You're just like happy that you can have such a great life. Like America's an awesome country. And it's like the amount of natural resources we have here, our fundamental culture of, gun culture and the homestead culture, baseball, apple pie, all that stuff, country music. It's like, it's really a great place. It's just, I just hope people watch out for that sucking tendency of wanting to justify bad behavior, because a lot of people, if they're just honest with themselves, they don't want anything different. They just want to bitch about it. It's kind of like those couples that just complain about each other, but they don't want to break up. They just like bitching.
Well, yeah, you need to bitch. Yeah, it's a currency in itself. But when it comes to farming, something I worry about is it being erased. You know, we're in West Virginia, and I'm seeing farmland, beautiful farmland, just get obliterated by McMansion, like these giant rashes of McMansions. Do you see that out there, and you worry about farming just going extinct in this country?
It can, or else the people go extinct. So it's like, I'd like to flip something. Everyone's saying, oh, BlackRock is buying America. How about Americans are selling to BlackRock? I always like to flip the onus of accountability, where if someone's buying something, that means someone's selling something. So it's like, if people are getting rid of their farms for McMansions, that's their choice, and there's a serious consequence to that. And my area's not like that, and you can't stop it. It's like dirt, seeds, and sun and water. Like, you can't stop that. If you have the will to farm, like, you're gonna. And I think there's a huge market for small independent farmers for local supplies. I think it's huge. I think it's harder and harder to pull off giant farms. I know some guys that run 100,000 acre farms, and it's getting brutal. Like, it's getting labor, getting people that can understand it, getting all the different chemicals and all the machinery from all over the world, and there's a war here and a blockade here. It's so hard. And then when you have these ripples and these agitations, it's very, very fragile. And so that's why I'll say it forever. I'll just keep telling people that to start getting local supply chains for food and start growing stuff yourself and just figure out how you can do it. And then people get so mad at me for saying that. I'm like, dude, you'll be a lot more angry if there's no food. Like, and that is absolutely possible when you have these giant farms. And if that's why FEMA literally will pay to bring Mexicans to these farms, because there will be crops rotting in the fields. Right. And that goes into like Gerber baby products. Like, I know these guys, and it's like, if you don't get that, and it's the supply chain is so rhythmic. It's so like, if you miss one thing, it rots. And that's why people use preservatives and chemicals and GMOs and all this, because it gives them a little more time on this crazy supply chain. And if, like, let's say you got rid of Monsanto, you got rid of Roundup, like 100 million people would die of starvation. Right. And so like, that top-down approach won't work. And that's why I'm like, if you start like local and you build it up, then you can get rid of Monsanto and Roundup, because there won't be a demand. Right now, there's no way to farm these farms without massive chemical operations. There's just no way. Like, there's not enough people to pull the weeds. Right. They have these huge machines, and they still can't do it.
What you're saying about people dying because you take away the supply chain reminds me of the Thomas Sowell quote, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. Right. And like, so if you get rid of that, I disagree with a lot of the things that are in a lot of the food that's in the supermarkets, but, I do think they want to poison us to a large degree, but they also need it so it survives for an amount of time to get to the people who need it in all these different places around the country and world at large.
But very simply, like, okay, so I want to buy a farm. What do I do?
No, where do you live? Do you have any?
I live in Frederick. No, I live in Frederick, Maryland. And let me tell you, all the land around us is being built. Townhouse.
And that goes back to what Owen's saying, though, because it is true. A lot of these people are just selling it, and they're retiring and going elsewhere where there's farmland or somewhere quieter. Yeah. You have to stop that somehow.
Family's so important.
But like, even just a small piece of land is going to cost you money.
Yeah, but that's all.
You have to have the money to put it. Yeah, but what starts?
You get, well, Owen knows better than me, but I would say you get
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't just be like, oh, just go buy a farm and then we start from there. But it's like, everyone's being swallowed in this economy right now, too.
I didn't say that. I said you can start with a window in an apartment. I literally just said
True.
Okay.
That's right.
It's like growing vegetables.
They want to hear it. It's really a phenomenon to me, because I'll take the time and explain it. Like, because I never would say, go buy a farm. I would never say, go get a bunch of cows. I would say, start with something in your windowsill. Start with microgreens. Start with anything, because I don't think there's going to be no food. I think there's going to be food without any nutrition in it, and the preservatives are going to be like a slow kill that they also can make money on with cancer treatment. So if you just start anywhere, and I'm talking, I have an orange tree in my barn that I just keep a light on because I love oranges, but I live in a really cold place. So like indoor stuff is totally doable. You can just take one of your lamps and just put in a grow light and just put a tomato plant there and just watch the miracle of it, and you'll get calm, you'll get peaceful, because you're like, one tomato seed can grow 50 tomatoes. Each one of those has 100 tomato seeds in it that can grow. It's just exponential food that all it requires is water, sun, and dirt. And so it really is about human consciousness, and it's about the fear response, where someone like me will say this, and they'll like, because I get it with the money stuff too. People will be like, oh, must be nice. You were this Hollywood guy. You have all this money. I would farm if I had more money. I'm like, dude, farming is what like the poor have always done. It's like farming, the fact that in the last 10 years, farming has become this like thing that you associate with being rich
Bougie.
is so fucking funny to me.
Right.
It's like, no, you just get like a few chickens and they give you an egg every day, and then your food scraps go there, and then that's it. It's like,
I can't have a
let's
chicken
say
in my
no way.
apartment.
You gotta put the chicken in the trunk.
Chicken in my
What I
bathtub.
was talking about?
Yeah.
Go, you can go door to door. Like, let's say where there's a will, there's a way. Let's say you live in Maryland and all this shit, and then you just see houses with dirt, like with yards. You just knock on the door and just be like, hey, I live in an apartment. Do you mind if I put like a raised bed in your yard? And they'd be like, oh, I haven't heard. No one's knocked on the door since 1971.
Yeah, no one's answering doors these days.
I don't know.
Gotta try.
I mean, so I think community outreach, where you can find an area, churches around me do this, schools around me do this, where you just try. You just say, because dude, the amount of inspiration that draws on people, where you just look at a school and there's like a little garden bed that the kids water.
Yep.
Like that's the solution. Like it really is. And so I'm not telling people to spend all their money on farm and run out into the boonies, and that people just put that in my mouth. I take like time to explain that isn't what I'm saying, and they still hear that. It's fascinating to me.
Well, I think
Kinda
it's
sounds like-
you got to start small. Like we started with 2 small or little beds for gardens on our little plot of land, and the amount of cucumbers we get is crazy. You know, we've saved a lot with the
Money
produce.
is cheaper, and then you start realizing that you can pickle them and make your own pickles,
Yep.
and they last all winter. Then you realize that all this like superfood that everyone's spending all this money on in Whole Foods is simply our ancestors' way of preserving food over the winter. You take, like when people have all this like kombucha and all that stuff, it's like you use bacteria and you use various starts and sourdough and all this stuff, and then you can save it. You can take chicken eggs and put them in pickling lime, and they last like a year. They'll just last a year as fresh as the day they were laid.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that. And I will tell as many people as I can. And I don't know why there's like a negative reaction to it, but that's why I'm also trying to just stick with comedy and just do comedy that I think people will enjoy. And my special's coming out Friday at owenbenjamin.com.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that. And I think people need to hear it. I think people get mad maybe because they're projecting. Maybe they don't have.
Yeah, it's also fear. I feel for them. I totally do. They're like, you can just say that so easy, but it's so much harder. I'm like, I get it.
I think some people
it's
aren't
not really that easy, I don't think.
I mean, it's.
What's that?
It
I just don't know
depends.
that it's really that easy. Okay, I grow a cucumber, but then you're saying we'll get a chicken, but I can't get a chicken, right?
Oh, you can get a chicken.
Okay.
Put it in your apartment.
My
Don't tell anybody.
recommendation for you is just be super grateful for the system then. Like,
No,
that's
I'm
a
not
total-
saying that I'm not open to it. I'm just saying, like, there are people out there who, they feel they're struggling, and how do you make it work? It's easy when people who are doing it make it seem like, oh, all you have to do is do this.
I think for the people who like the system, they have it, and for the people who are in the system, but who want to be not as reliant on it, they find loopholes to make it happen, right? Like even when we were in Brooklyn in a shoebox, you know, we were doing things with raw milk, driving out of our way to do it, or to get it rather, and growing, like Owen's saying, little things in the window, you know, like peppers or whatever little basil plants she was doing, you know, and that's just a start. And it wasn't glamorous, but it's what we had. And we had little test tubes in the windows. And so, because it was important to us, right? Like we were like, at that time, kind of just opening our eyes to how a lot of the stuff we were buying in the store was bad for us, right? And also because our firstborn had a milk protein allergy, which was messing up his stool. And we had to change the way my wife especially ate. And so since she was changing, I was going to change. And we did. Through that, discovered all these things like about why raw milk for us is better. So that's what we did. We started super small because it meant a lot to us. And now, you know, kind of like some people would think we're too crazy. My parents think we're nuts. My parents, who live on a farm, mind you, a horse farm, but who live on a farm, they manage this farm. They think my wife and I are crazy because we care so much about what our kids eat. Of course, it's not always going to be perfect, but we try really hard to make it stuff that we approve of, and it's not super over-processed and filled with poison and all that good stuff. But it's just funny because going back to like talking about how couples just love to bitch, people also just love to bitch about the things they rely on, but then they rely on it because it's all they have and it's the easy route. But for me, I've never been one to do that, and I always make my life harder. But for reasons I enjoy.
More inspiring than a lot of the farms. That's the irony. Is like someone like me, if I see someone growing something in a window or just being creative about it, I think that's beautiful. I find that very inspiring. Where it's just where you make it work. You know, I'm a guy that likes to see the flower poking through the sidewalk. I think is the best.